All right. Hey, welcome everybody to the show. Welcome to Teaching That Counts, the podcast for math teachers and all teachers that are interested in talking about mathematics and math education. I'm so glad to be back. This is been a break for a while, and now I get to talk to you about my year. This is season 4. I can't believe season 4 of Teaching That Counts. And I've got my math T-shirt on today. I'm recording a video, so we'll put this up a video in my office here. It says, oh, let me move the mic around. Math is tough, but so are you. And that, of course, is what we try to teach all our kids in terms of mindset, right? A positive math mindset. And this year has been quite an experience that I am excited to share with you today. And so I don't have a guest on, but I think I have a lot to say. And I'm going to preview our next our next season, and some guests that I have on next season, this season, which we're going to start off with a great guest, and I'll talk about her in just a few moments here. But it's been over a little over a year since I had the podcast on, and the podcast has been on hiatus, and I've got a lot to tell you about this year. Lots and lots has happened, but I am so grateful that many of you have still listened, and some of you have come back to listen and are interested in math education and are interested in coming back and listening to what this podcast is. I've got so much stuff lined up, and we're really going to have a great time taking this podcast, I think, to new and exciting places with some great guests set up for this year. So I'm so excited to bring you this podcast. Each month, we're going to have we'll do this podcast each month, and we'll have a variety of guests lined up for this season, as I said before. And we're hoping to have some things going on as I make my way around some of these great math conferences that are coming up. So, and another thing too, if you don't listen to the NCSM podcast, Learning with Leaders, I am also the co-host with Karen Riley Jeffers on that podcast. So please come and take a listen to that one. We have just some amazing guests that I've met around the country, and they have so much to talk about in being a leader in math education. So let's talk about these big changes this year and what really has caused this podcast to go in hiatus, like I said before, for a whole year. So let's get into it. So I started this year as in the district that I work at, the district secondary math instructional coach, along with 2 other math coaches. We had such a great team. We have a great team. And this was going to be my 7th year as a coach. And as you've heard in the previous seasons, we made some great strides in our district, shifting from a primarily explicitly direct instruction format to an inquiry and a problem-based format approach where students have been asked to share their thoughts, where they're the drivers of the mathematical thinking, the investigation, the learning, and we utilize student discourse, all of those things that we talk about on this podcast. That is stuff that we've been working with our teachers in that district for that I've been working with in the last 7 years, but the other 2 math coaches were there before me. So we'd say at least a decade we have been working towards a lot of the things that we have seen in the mathematics framework in California, in the new framework and the new curriculum that's high quality instructional materials that are being brought out, and getting students to be the drivers of their own thinking. So we've been working with those things in our district. I've been working with teachers and really establishing some great relationships with some great teachers, just awesome people. And this year was my chance to really get working with our high school teachers and some junior high teachers and really expanding those things that we've been working on. And we've been doing a lot of great work with a team of great math coaches. It was really a K-12 effort because we have one math coach that specifically focused on K-6 work, and then I worked with another coach. She did K-8, and then I did 7-12. So we all worked together with a common goal of getting kids to talk more in math and to have better math agency. So that was our goal. And we had been working on that for several years, and things were going well. So as the year began, a teacher that I worked with, I had been working with, and I worked with this teacher in the class, like as a colleague, as I was in the classroom. And then as I transitioned as a coach, we worked together a few times as a coach, and he couldn't make it back. For various reasons, he was unable to come back to his assignment. And so I was with the principal. I was talking with the principal, and as we do normally, we have a monthly update with the principals, and we talk about where we're going, what are the plans that we're going to be doing, and how we're going to be working with our teachers. And as we were discussing about the teacher that, for all intents and purposes, might not be coming back that year, we're thinking about who could support those teachers. Are there any long-term subs out there? Who is applying for this long-term position or a temporary position at that point? This was for Math 1 and Math 2 at the high school. And I thought about for a long time that I wanted to finish out my career and retire, coming back to the classroom and doing all the things that I had talked about as a coach. And maybe I had this little bit of Skywalker syndrome, I don't know what you want to call it, that I was thinking, I can come in and I can, I don't want to say save the day, but I can really support and help these students and help this school that I had been working at before I had become a coach. So just coming right back into this high school. And so I asked, how about I come back and I take over these classes and I do all the things that I had been working with teachers and I had been talking about is possible with kids. So very, very, very quickly, within a few days, it went from me being the secondary instructional coach to me being in the classroom full time. And when I say a matter of days, I mean, I had this meeting with the principal where it was just a thought on a Thursday. And by Monday, 4 days later, I was back in the classroom with students. Now, this is like late September, guys. It's not even the beginning of it's not like we hadn't started school yet. Students were in with a long-term sub with substitute for a whole month and a half. Yeah, longer than a month because we start early August. So they had already gotten almost through an entire unit of study. They had started with a substitute. All of the culture was already starting to be established within these classes, and we're talking freshmen and sophomores. So there was a lot of work to be done in establishing some culture of my own, having already started a school year. So as you can imagine, that wasn't an easy job, but I had many goals and desires that I thought about coming back into the classroom. I wanted to work on building thinking classrooms that I've been working with other teachers on. I wanted to look at note-taking. I wanted to look at inquiry. How are we doing with this inquiry-based instruction? How are we doing problem solving? Back in my day, when I was, a long time ago, I've been in this game for 27 years, guys. 27 years ago, we call it constructivism. questioning, using purposeful questions, looking at the 5 practices for mathematic discussion, orchestrating mathematical discussion, focusing on the standards for math practice, all of the things that I had been working with other teachers on. I wanted to be able to do those things and say, not really like a hold my drink moment. I'll show you what we can do, but really like being able to experience that, because I think as a coach, we get out of this classroom, right? And we are in classrooms once or twice and we're helping teachers, but we don't have that. The longer we're away from the classroom, the more distance we get from that day-to-day grind that teachers feel. And so I wanted to be able to get that sense back. And really at that point, I was thinking, okay, well, I've got 10 or 15 years left in me before retirement. Let's finish off this career doing all this good work and having those relationships with students that I had in the past. So that was my goal. I also thought that coming back, I'd be able to work with the teachers in a team and be able to kind of like pseudo coach. So be kind of like a teacher coach, still be on the team, push the teams forward and think about how can we be utilizing this every day. Just a different perspective than being able to than just helping one teacher at one time or this lesson at this one time. I think some of the successes I had as an instructional coach was when I had the opportunities to work with the teacher one-on-one for an extended period of time, and we saw some great growth in a calculus class. So I thought, let's do this. Let's get back in the classroom. Let's get this experience. Let's get some relationships with kids. And I'm going to talk about that more, about that experience. That'll be what this podcast is about in just a few moments. So simultaneously, as I was doing this work with students and getting back in the classroom, I was also working with another district and doing some consulting and working with their high school teachers. And as I was doing that work, I really did feel like that was my purpose. So as we speak now, I really did think, okay, how do I balance teaching and consulting and working with adults? And as I was doing my consulting work with adults, I really did feel like that is where I should be right now in my career. I had thought I was supposed to be in the classroom, but as the days went by and the work went by, I really did feel like that was my place. So I flip-flopped and decided to leave teaching and leave my district and expand into full-time consulting and support many districts and many teachers. And around December, I let my principal know. I let my department know. I wanted to give her a lot of time to find someone to replace me. And that way I can build and really work towards consulting this coming school year. So as we speak, this is recording in June, and we're on the work path. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. So January came by, and as January hit, I was asked if I would be willing to take on a student teacher, a pre-service teacher from the university, to come work with me and be her cooperating teacher and have her work in the classroom and get some experience. And I thought that was another great way to work with an adult. Now, younger, it always surprises me how old I am. I don't want to say that I'm old, but I have been teaching for 27 years, which turns out that's about as long as my student teacher has been alive. So yeah, I've been teaching a long time. You'll get a chance to meet my student teacher too in our next episode. She's going to be my guest for our next episode. She's going to talk about her experience in the classroom. It's the first time in the classroom and but getting to experience a inquiry-based classroom, a BTC classroom, a thinking classroom. And for those of you that listen to this podcast, I know I've done a lot of stuff with building thinking classrooms, but it's not just about thinking. It's not just about the whiteboard. It's not just about students getting up, because we had days where students were not up, but they were telling stories and they were getting involved in what was happening. They were being creative. So it's much, my classroom was much more than students just thinking about a problem. They were thinking about creating problems, creating mathematics, and putting mathematics together. So there was a lot for her to learn. You're going to get to listen to her experience if you tune into the next podcast. So she was with me for this second semester, which takes us up to now. And now I am getting set up, bringing you back the podcast once a month, which is going to be awesome. And I'm getting ready to work with districts across California, across the U.S., getting ready to get out on the presentation trail, get to conferences. I'll be at several conferences coming up. And here's a bonus. I am working on a book. So hopefully I'm planning to have this book out by next summer. It's on coaching junior high and high school math teachers and supporting those math teachers in and part of that is going to be listening to their stories. So we're working on gathering some qualitative data and to put stories into this book. So those of you that go out and get this book, you can hear. It's a lot of this podcast, right? A lot of this podcast was bringing stories out, and you're going to see that in that book. So keep an ear out. I don't have a title for this thing yet. We're just getting started on the writing. So, but I'm super, super excited to have that as something I'm working on this year. Okay, so let's talk about this year in the classroom. And some of you out there that listen to my podcast are teachers. Sometimes you're just, I got somebody reached out to me and said, hey, this is just a thought partner. What am I doing? How can I be thinking about what we're doing? And I'm going to share my experience this year of being a coach. So if you're a coach and you listen to this, I think getting the experience of being back in the classroom on a day-to-day, I'll talk about that change. And then for those of you that haven't been in the classroom day-to-day, I'm saying day-to-day a lot, but really, like in an extended period of time since before COVID, or a little bit before that, I'm going to share that experience too, because it was quite a learning experience, to say the least. So I'll talk about that. So let's talk about what happened and all the things I tried to bring from coaching into the classroom, and the real impact I think I had on some of the teachers that I worked with that are all friends of mine. So that's one of the things that's kind of bittersweet about leaving. Aside from the amazing relationships I made with students, but also this will be kind of like the second time I'm leaving my team here at the high school. So let's start here. My previous experience before going into coaching and leaving the classroom the last time was I was teaching. Now I've taught everything from 7th grade all the way up to AP Calculus. I've taught even physics, taught some physics courses. I've taught Algebra 1. I taught pre-algebra in 9th grade pre-algebra. So I've taught the gamut, okay? But the most recent courses I taught were AP Statistics, AP Calculus, and pre-calculus. And then I taught some statistics courses at the local university. So my experience right before leaving were AP courses, or AP and honors classes, and junior, and senior level classes, all right? And it was right before COVID, so I left the classroom in 2019. And so this assignment when I came back was Math 1 and Math 2. So I had 9th and 10th graders primarily. I had some 11th and 12th graders in Math 2 and Math 1. and I had some ninth graders in math 2. So those were the advanced students in our school. We don't split those kids in honors classes. They're in the same general math 2 class. So one of the things that I had been working with teachers on is how do we differentiate math 2 so that we provide those opportunities for the students that are advanced to be prepared for pre-calculus and AP calculus as they go along. And so that one was one I know that I've had discussions with teachers about, what's the right way to do this? Should we split them? Should we have an honors classes separate and so forth? But I truly believe that we can have students that are excelling in the same class, and we can provide the things that they need to. And for all, my belief is that I did do that. It took some creativity, but also it goes to one of my personal beliefs in that and I told this to my my student teacher, is that we need to teach to the top. And what I mean by that is we're not going to let kids suffer, right? We're not going to just leave kids that are struggling or need extra support. We're not just going to leave them behind and just teach the kids on the top of the class. What I mean by that is that our rigor level is going to stay at the top level rigor. Like, I'm going to push all kids to the top level of rigor that my top students need to excel at. Okay, so I think if you keep that in mind, you're not going to end up. I know we tend to think, oh, I've got to meet kids. Like, I got to meet kids where they're at. Like, I got to meet the lowest kids where they're at. And then we get in this case where I know that some teachers say, well, our top kids aren't going to get they're not going to get the skills that they need for these classes that they're going to take later on. But if we don't settle and we make our expectations, our rigor high enough that we're going to expect those kids to push themselves. Mild, medium, spicy. Get those spicy all the time, but we're going to allow all kids to reach that spicy. We're going to put supports in there to get those kids up to that level of rigor as well, and we're not going to take it down. Then we're allowing and we're bringing opportunities for all kids. So that's just a personal belief, and that's something that I really, really strived to do this year in the classroom. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, like, how do you got kids that are struggling or unmotivated? Man, did I see that unmotivated? That I have a lot of teachers tell me, gosh, some of the kids just they're not motivated, they don't try. And as a coach, I think, oh well, we can do this and we can do that. And I think the reality is that yes, some of those things help, but we do have kids that are, for some reason, they have a reason in their background that they're very unmotivated, and we have to find those ways. And just changing the lesson structure, just changing the math itself isn't always going to be the solution, right? It's not always going to help every kid. Helps sometimes, and those some days that it does is great, but it's not every day, right? So being able to understand like how we can support all our kids and still making those relationships, getting kids, telling kids that you believe in them and they know that you believe them by not only your words but your actions. Those are all the things that I really, really tried really hard to do with my students. I've done it in the past, but it was different than I experienced in the past because I was, like I said, I was used to AP calculus, AP statistics, pre-calculus, that there's already an intrinsic motivation within there that some kids struggled with having that motivation now that was teaching the classes that I was teaching this year. So that was probably the first thing that I had to work through, was finding how to motivate students even if they didn't have motivation, which definitely was a struggle sometimes. And I think, though, one of the things that came to be pretty evident by the end of the year was that many, if not all of my students knew that I believed in them. They even wrote it in their like yearbook or whatever, that the thing you remember the most was that I pushed them even though they didn't think they can get pushed that far. And so that is so powerful, right? That was my intention. So I really do still believe in my bones that can be the thing that everyone can do, is to make sure that they push kids, they teach to the top, let everyone get there, and put the supports in that's necessary. So what else was different? So I have to tell you, man, I was not used to the behaviors that I was seeing those first few weeks, and really for the rest of the year. But I would get told as a coach, like, this is what's going on, this is going on, but you don't really see it as much when you have three adults in the room or whatever. And my previous experience as AP, I didn't really have to do too much in terms of classroom management. It's been a long while since I taught a class where management was something that I really, really needed to focus on. Now, not that I can't do it. I've done it in the past. I know how to manage a class, but I have to tell you, like, my experience in classroom management was before COVID. One, it's not really COVID, by the way. That's the issue. But two, it really is before the onset of social media and cell phones. So I didn't really have to battle those things before I left the classroom. So coming into this classroom with freshmen, for one, just bigger eighth graders, and the behaviors that I was just not used to. I'm not used to kids throwing stuff across the room, and some of the meanness that I heard as they communicated to each other. These were things that I really needed to get a handle on. And man, phones were a big issue, right? We have a phone policy in that school, but even then, the fact that they still get their phones in between periods and at lunch, like, there's just so much phone attachment. And if you haven't read The Anxious Generation, I recommend that. That's a good book to read. But there were definitely some things that I had to figure out. And coming into a situation where they had a sub for about a month and a half, and then a solid teacher, that was a struggle for them as well for me. So that was, I would say, probably some of the most stressful time that I've had in my career were those first few months, and working with those students, especially in terms of classroom management. And then I wasn't familiar with SEL approaches and positive, not the positive reinforcement, but just a lot of the new approaches in classroom management that some schools are using, and our school was using too. And I was really impressed at some of the ways that those were helpful for students, especially in my cases, in some of the things I was doing. But I have to tell you that I did revert back to some of the old school approaches, and I say old school, I say in quotes old school approaches that I've done in the past. And I have to tell you, a balanced approach worked best. I couldn't be the positive reinforcement guy all the time. Here are tickets, here's some snack. Like, you can't do that, because then students take advantage of that. So I did have to balance that with the out of the classroom. This is something that we cannot be doing in class. You need to leave. Kind of like the more hard line approach. I had to do that a few times. You know what? I took a phone away once, and a kid says, "Ugh, I hate this class." Like, just complained a ton. I still took the phone away. The next day, we were on good terms, and she did exactly what these things happen really quick. As long as you balance with caring, and the kids know you care. They they respect you also when you have to lay down the law. I thought of a funny story. I actually haven't suspended a kid from a class in years. It had to be like 15 years, right? And I just got fed up with the throwing pencils and throwing stuff. So I suspended a couple kids from class, and I told them, I was like, "Yes, I haven't had to do this. I don't like to do this, but I haven't had to do this in like 15 years, guys. Like, why do we keep doing this?" And the funny thing is that these particular kids would come to my room at lunch and hang out, and then they would say like almost like a badge of honor, like he threw us out, and we were the first people in 15 years that he did this, and this is so like it was like a cool thing to do. Now, I didn't have any more problems with them after that, but I'm just saying that because the respect level and the level of relationship that we had was still not broken, because I think I balanced that with still more of, guys, I know you can do this. Let's just shape up. And I believe in you. You just got to believe in yourself. So there were plenty of times where, man, the behaviors in the classroom management, it was something I had not experienced in the past. So you guys that teach day to day, every day is a grind. I love the memes. I totally get them as a teacher, but man, that was new for me. Now, one thing I did love throughout the year was being able to use building thinking classrooms and using a digital curriculum. We used a digital curriculum. However, I do have to say that I'm not going to say I'm anti-digital curriculum. I'm just digital curriculum when appropriate. So I kind of I tried really hard at a point to take the Chromebooks away from the students, that we didn't need to use them. We were up on the boards, or they were in groups, or they were discussing something in pairs. Whatever the task might have been, I still wanted them to discuss. But if the task was like, I would say the geometry stuff, when we were able to do some digital things with geometry and see the transformations and the translations, along with using, tracing paper and patty paper to do all that stuff, so they got a manipulative piece with it, like hands-on, but they were also seeing some things, right? Or they saw, there was a really cool one that we did where they saw like a candy factory, or I think it was a toy factory, right? And they got to see how things dilated, or things changed in a function. These types of things that were, I can't really show them all that well, and it makes it a little bit of a game. We had some really great interaction with that. So those lessons went really well. But at the same time, I still took that away and tried to do, assessments that were on paper, group work that was on paper, stuff on the boards and still talking about it, notes that were on paper. So I wouldn't say they were DI notes. They were more like BTC style notes, where students were actually involved in the note making process rather than just note taking, which if you listen to this and you are using Amplify, I'm going to do this for some other ones, but if you're using Amplify, at some point this year, I'm going to put up my Amplify Building Thinking Classroom note style up on Teacher Pay Teachers if you want to purchase that, or I'll put it on my my website for purchase when I put up my merch. Yes, I'm telling you now, we're going to have Teaching That Counts merch at some point this year. So those worked really well. I was really proud of that. And honestly, that came from some feedback from a student that was just saying, like, I need something a little bit more concrete. And so I started making those for her, and it worked well for a lot of students. And it really gave a good flow to the class, where we started with a good task where they had to think about and connect, and then we used those connections to do some note making. So that worked really well. In terms of other things I tried, we did, in terms of like the classroom itself, we did groups In fact, I started with groups. I was like, oh, this is going to be just like before. I started with groups, and man, the behaviors were just off the wall. So I switched back to rows. And once I got the behaviors under control, then we moved back into groups. We finished off the year in groups of 4. I found that groups of 4 work really well for desks, and when they're up on the boards, if they're doing group work on the whiteboards, then we're in groups of 3. So, but in terms of just the space, that was the other thing, is that we have a classroom with space. I had 35 kids in one class, right? Teaching 160 kids or whatever for the whole day. It's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work. So thinking about how to rearrange so it's a tight space if the kids are standing or if they're moving around, talking to partners. All of those things were considerations that I hadn't really thought about for every single day of work, right? So that was something that I really did work on. And, added mild, medium, spicy questions, which kids loved. Pretty much tried everything that I had been talking about, and over the course of the last 7 years as a coach. So I learned a lot, and I would have to say that the thing that I stuck to the most was a focus on the standards for mathematical practice and student discourse. Like if there was anything I wanted my kids to get out of the year, it was that they can explain their thinking. They're okay with making mistakes, and if they can explain their thinking again, discussing it with another person, and then using patterns and modeling mathematics. And I think that was a success. I saw a lot of growth from a lot of students, and some days were better than others, and I think all teachers out there can relate to that. Some days things go great, some days things don't. But for the most part, the year was a pretty good year in an experience that I think I really, really needed for my personal growth and for my professional growth, because now as I work with teachers and I go into consulting, I can really lean into the experience that I had this year, being back in the classroom. So I'm not so far away. Like right now, I'm not so far removed from so many years of the classroom that I can now get a real good feeling of what the time requirements and pressures are, right? I started to feel at some point as a coach that I was asking teachers to do things in which their time bandwidth just wasn't there. Read these lessons, follow these lessons all the way through, make a plan on this, and like how are we supposed to do all that? Right? We have 160 kids. I have 3 kids at home. My wife's a teacher. I make dinner. I take my kids to music practice every day. They have some sort of lesson, some sort of this, some sort of that. By the time I get home, I'm tired, but I'm still grading. I'm still lesson planning. I'm still putting stuff in calendars. Like there's a lot of stuff. And so to add on that prep time, right, which in the prep time that we get, an hour, doesn't really have enough time to prep. Sometimes you just need to rest for 10 minutes. You just can't do all of the things, right? So something I learned is in small chunks. Obviously, I have a lot of experience. I can kind of think on my feet quickly. I know what I want to be able to do. I don't need to spend hours and hours looking at a lesson. But we have to keep in mind that even when we're using high-quality instructional materials, do our teachers have the time to read through the entire, 5 pages of teacher material for one lesson? Like we have to be realistic with what time our teachers have. And we can't say, well, they can do it after school, or they're just not putting in the time, because I don't think that's fair when they have a lot of stuff, like may have families at home too, may have things like that too. So we have to just keep in mind, like, how can we best support our teachers with using high quality instructional materials, but within their bandwidth, and understanding the stresses that we have to deal with all the time, whether it's making those decisions every day, whether it's handling those management issues, whatever it might be. We have to be, as a coach or a consultant or a leader, we have to be cognizant of that, right? Last thing we want to do is burn people out too quickly. So like I said, I learned a ton. I feel like I talked a ton to you guys about my experience this year. This is like the guest on this podcast is myself. So what's next? What's next for me? What's next for this podcast? And I'm going to take everything that I learned this year, everything that I learned as a coach the last 7 years, and everything that I learned as a teacher 20 years before that, and possibly even the stuff I'm experienced and learned as a school board member, like in a big district-wide thing, right? So like big picture. I'm going to take all of that learning, all of the things that I've done, and I'm going to put all of that energy into my book, which will be out hopefully in a year. I'll give updates on Teaching That Counts on how the book writing is coming. But I'm going to put all of that and all of my experience and my love of mathematics, my love of teaching, my love of data science into my consulting, which is Maestas Math Educational Consulting, LLC. You can find me online at maestasmath.com. And I am going to be working with teachers, with leaders, with districts, doing the work of growing mathematics education, getting students to think, becoming the drivers of their own learning, and where teachers become facilitators, but understanding at the same time, understanding that all this work that we can do can bring us new joy as teachers of mathematics, to bring us new vibrance, to enjoy teaching, but also to understand we have a life. So what can we put into practice that's going to be, I'm not going to say easy, but doable within our time, and being able to build your practice. So that's my goal with my consulting, is to help teachers build their practice, grow as teachers, get students talking more, and enjoy their teaching and connecting with them, so that they can be the best teacher, the best math teacher that they can possibly be within the time frame that they have. So I'll be doing that. If you know of districts that would love my support, feel free to reach out. I'm also going to be doing the presentation circuit, I guess. I'm going to be doing a presentation at CMC South in November. More to come and talk about the podcast. More to come on the podcast talking about that. You'll love it if you're looking for some data routines. It's going to be awesome. I will be at NCSM and NCTM in Denver in October. And we'll be doing a live broadcast of the NCSM Learning with Leaders podcast. So come by and see us there. We'll be interviewing some people. We have some great guests lined up for that. Come and see us there. And I'll be at CMC Central. So CMC is California Math Council, for those of you that listen to me and aren't in California. I'll be at CMC Central, which is in Bakersfield. That is in March. And several other ones I will put out where I'll be. If I'll be presenting at any of these conferences, come see me, come say hi. And we might even see if we can schedule you to come on a podcast if you're interested. I'm always looking for teachers, for leaders, for administrators to talk about their experiences in their classrooms, and might even have some kids coming out here soon. So thank you again. I hope you were inspired by this crazy year that I've had. But what a wonderful, wonderful experience to go on to my new venture and my new phase in my professional career. So thank you again for joining me today. And I hope that you continue to join me on this journey in teaching and continue to listen to my podcast. Thank you again. You're always welcome to reach out. Thank you for joining me. And I hope to see you. Well, I won't see you, but I hope you can be here next month.